out there, if there is anyone out there. Welcome to another Friday night conversation with me and my guest. And this week, this started more wine focused, but as time has moved along, we seem to have moved more to the farming a little bit, as well as wine. Wine is always the foundation of this, but last time talking with Tegan Pasalacqua of Sandlands and Turley, this gentleman's name came up, Paul Dolan. And any of you that are in our business, particularly in the organic or biodynamic side of our business, will know that name. Paul's really pretty famous and well-renowned and huge respect within our industry. I've met him a couple of times, but I've never sat down and chatted with him at any great length. So for me, this is a real honor and a privilege, and I intend to extract as much useful information as I can out of Paul this evening. We're going to taste one of Paul's wines. We're going to taste one of the Tablas Creek wines. And as usual, we're just going to see where this conversation takes us. And I think it's going to get pretty interesting. So I think really wasting time listening to me is pointless. We should bring Paul in and start chatting. Cue Ian. Hey, Paul.
Hey, buddy.
Nice
to see you.
Yeah, you too. Been a long time since I did see you. I can't even remember when it was, but there's a seminar somewhere where I sat in the audience listening to you, no doubt.
Oh, that was the one I think you said down in San Francisco at the
the biodynamic one. Yeah, that was a great conference. Actually, I went there a little bit skeptical, I will say, about what I was getting myself into, but I left really more inspired than I arrived. So if I get that out of a conference, then it's a pretty good conference for me, I would say. And always, more than anything with those things, I think it's the people I meet in the background and chatting to people like you when you come off stage and general conversation. But as I was thinking about this conversation, which I don't know where I'm going to go with this because there's so much, but I thought we should begin by tipping our hat to a mutual friend of ours who passed away, amigo Bob Cantasano, who I believe you know probably better than I, but when I first started at Tablas Creek and was trying to go, they wanted me to farm everything organically, which I had never done, and I could find no information in Paso Robles or no help. People were basically laughing at me. Somehow I ended up speaking with him, and he did me the honor of coming to the property, and we spent a day together, and we remained friends from that day on. I spoke to him not a lot, but my phone calls were always welcome. He didn't charge me $400 an hour to speak to him, which was nice. And just a great man. I mean, you will know more than I, but certainly instrumental in CCOF organization, in the Peaceful Valley Farm Supply, and pushing organics, throughout all areas of farming and in many parts of the world, right?
Yep. Yeah, he was a unique soul. We didn't. There's a couple guys when he passed away just recently. That was sort of a sad day, and the other one was Alan York, who was just deeply involved in biodynamics. There's they come along in history occasionally, that people that have this particular insight into what I call it kind of the source of the matter. They see it at a very, very deep level, and they can explain it simply and pragmatically, so that guys like you and me can understand it, and then we can engage in it. We can start to utilize some of those practices because we understand why you would actually do it. So it's not from the scientific side per se, although they do have a science side of them. For sure, because they want to validate what it was that they were teaching us. But so with Amigo, I'm not sure if I told you this, but when he first came up to work with us up in Mendocino, he didn't have any experience in grapes. He was talking about carrots. He was talking, but he was talking about it from the nutritional side. So 20 something years ago. He was, or even longer than 20 years. So we're talking, 30 plus years ago, or more, maybe. Oh, it goes way back. But so I think the Holy Grail, if you will, is how is what's the impact on the essence and the expression of the wine? And it's we talk quality, but there's something about the fullest expression. How do you get the complete expression? It's kind of ludicrous to grow what we grow, and we say that place and where it grows, or site, or terroir, or appellation, whatever the word is, and we talk about how important that is, and yet as winemakers or viticulturalists, we then use chemicals. I mean, you're basically killing that space, and so the you can't expect it to be fully expressed, or to have a full life expression to it. So when Amigo started talking about the nutritional value, and how that when you remove chemicals, that the nutrition can come through because you're operating inside of a healthy environment, a healthy soil, that was really intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, that 8 hours I spent with him on our property, and I'm not, at that point for sure, I was neither a farmer or a scientist. I'm still certainly not a scientist. I could loosely call myself a farmer these days, I suppose, but he turned it in 8 hours from me being convinced that I could never get this done to it seeming like a completely reasonable thing to be doing, and he made it tangible for me to just, okay, I can do this, and I don't need to seek the help of the guys trying to sell me chemicals. This is going to work, and it did. And he gave me help here and there down the road, but our conversations were more fun. And in the end, my family business is making apple cider too. So in the end, we used to speak every year about me driving up and getting apples from his project up there, but it never quite panned out, unfortunately. But anyway, hats off to that man. He was a great one, and he certainly had a huge influence on me. So let's talk about you. We'd have to spend days to cover everything you've done, but you've been at it for a long, long time. I mean, my first knowledge of you was Fetzer, which you were the man who got that on the map for sure, right? And then presumably Bonterra. You want to give us a brief history of Paul Dolan in not too long?
Not too long. What I'd love to say from the beginning is I'm a fourth generation winemaker that gets to work with his fifth generation kids.
That's pretty cool.
It is really cool. It's just great that my boys decided to get into the business, and my girls haven't quite convinced yet. I'm not sure that I will now, but they're sort of on different tracks. One's going into medicine, and the other one's raising kids. So they
can come back.
They can come back anytime. I've told them that. So started out as a young winemaker at Fetzer, and for years I was a winemaker there, and then ran the company for several years, and during that whole period of time, my great fascination was in sustainability. That was the term back in those days. Mm-hmm. And so we really organized ourselves what we called a triple bottom line. We wanted to make sure that everything that we did, a lot exactly like you guys are doing these days, is making sure that it makes a difference for people. It's the social equity side of things. It's a contribution to the environment, and it brings us a financial return at the same time. So those were real drivers for me, and I organized the company around that. And then when I was at Wine Institute, I helped lead that process of the Sustainable Wine Growing Alliance program, so that the entire industry now, 70% or something like that of the thousands of wineries that are and vineyards in California are engaged in that discovery, that exploration, if you will. But the leading edge stuff was really organic, for sure.
Right, and that's what you're talking about is not dissimilar in any way than the three pillars of the ROC program that we're involved with, and you're very much on the board of, I believe.
Yeah, and I was just made chairman of the board, so I'm
wow, you're not just on the board; you're in charge of the board.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. I think maybe that's congratulations.
Yeah.
Maybe good luck would be
careful what you wish for, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing program, the Regenerative Organic Certification. It's a response to watching organics go down kind of a negative pathway, if you will, or straying a bit away from soil as being the base for organics.
Diluted, maybe.
What's that?
a bit diluted, maybe it was becoming.
A little bit, and so this was an attempt. I think it's doing quite well. It's being received beautifully, to kind of bring it back on track, look at what was missing, and include what was missing. So it takes into consideration social justice when it comes to farm worker benefits and life, and elements that we can contribute to from the standpoint of their quality of life, whether it's pay or working conditions. And
That was
then
hugely impactful for me when we were going through that process. That out of everything, because obviously the farming and et cetera was something we already had a handle on, but that part of it, which I thought I had a handle on, but I learned, we all learned an immense amount, and it was really, really impactful on our team of people who I've been working with for 20 years. So it's not like I didn't know who they were, but just gave them a much, much stronger voice and more confidence to speak, which I found to be incredible.
it's huge now today, with the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's a critical component. And albeit I been engaged in the conversation for quite some time, 30 plus years. The sitting down and actually writing a document that gives us the guidepost on how we'll go into a business and help them maneuver their way through all of these questions. And the people like Amigo Bob did for you and I. He pointed to the things that we should consider, and then we can make decisions ourselves inside of those parameters. And then we start to build a relationship and understanding, a deeper understanding, with the values of regenerative farming, or with the values of social justice with your people. Yeah.
How do you think? I mean, when I look at the ROC, I mean, I did the conference with you at the biodynamic thing at Demeter, and shortly after that, Demeter went into kind of a struggle, and we lived through that, and we continue to support them, but it was difficult. I mean, how do we make sure that the ROC program doesn't falter like that, and doesn't falter, like you said, the organic thing did a little bit, though the organic thing is still hugely important, I believe. But with so many people involved and so global in farming, it's such a hard thing to keep it focused and keep it on track. That would be, if I was the chairman of the board, that I'd be stressing about that.
Well, I'm feeling really quite comfortable that the reception has been fantastic for ROC, because people can see the natural path. If you're an organic, you really wouldn't join the ROC unless you're already doing organics.
Right.
And to see that you're elevating your understanding and appreciation for healthy soil, and then taking on great animal welfare is a real critical component. I mean, you guys with your 300 sheep there, it's a very, very important element, and then therefore better understanding and appreciation what the nature of the relationship is between the land and the animals and people. That's we haven't done that deep dive, and with the exception of people like you have. It was, I was down there about a little over a year ago with the pandemic. I'm not exactly sure when it was, but I can't sure whether it was before or after. But I was completely inspired by the relationship that what's the shepherd's name?
Nathan Stewart.
Nathan, and that his relationship with the animals, and how he treated the animals, and how the health of the space was a critical component for the health of the animals.
Yeah,
No,
that's been important for all of us. And one of the things, the ROC thing for us at Tablas Creek has been really, I would say, the most impactful on the farming side, on my side of the business. The most impactful thing we've done. We've got more response, both from the press side of things, which is obviously super cool, but also from other farmers, not only grapes, just calling. And I just tell because they look at what we're doing and they're like, well, that's a big bite to take. And thing is just take us one step at a time. You don't have to go for it all at one go. It's getting in that program and slowly working towards that goal, I think is credible at any level. One step at a time. We were pretty far down the road anyway, but even still, there was a lot we did, again, particularly in the employee side of thing, which, not that we were mistreating our employees. Like I said, they've all been there for 20 years, so they're obviously okay, but there were small things that we tweaked and changed. Most importantly to me was the voice that they now have and the input that they give that they just never bothered giving back then, because in their eyes, oh, you guys are the managers and we'll just do what you tell us, even though we know it's probably not the best idea. And that's been really impactful for us, and I'm super stoked on it. So,
well,
carry on.
I was going to say we're really seeing it show up more in millennials. I think not that our generation wasn't really engaged, and obviously you and I are, but millennials have really kind of seen beyond what's next, and they want to be part of a purpose-driven organization. They want to live a purpose-driven life. They want to eat healthy. They understand the relationship between the healthy space that we eat, where our food comes from, and their body, and that whole relationship of the gut biome to the soil biome. And so it's really fascinating to be stepping into that world and that space. And just I think a lot of what we're talking about here is that there's this natural human nature to want to do more and to want to contribute. So we want to be able to explore in spaces that show up as missing, things that we don't know. And so, going back to Amigo, what Amigo brought was this whole new conversation that started to make sense. It's like, wow, I could actually shift my farming, and that's all I have to do is to do that. That's great. That makes so much sense. And we're starting to see more and more farmers recognize that the chemical farming paradigm doesn't work. We can't control the farm using chemicals any more than we can control our body with pills. It's a perfect, sort of like a perfect analogy, right? And or metaphor, I guess we'd say. And so there's this pathway of understanding and appreciation for you and I that are in the industry, or people that are buying the product, or people that eat food. So I'm seeing that so a new phrase for me is regenerative farming is farming in service of life.
Okay. So
the current paradigm of farming is really more farming in service of extraction. So how much can we get out of the soil and put back as minimal as possible? Where with this farming process, when you look at healthy soils, you look at healthy animals, and well taken care of people, it's all about the life energy it's all part of the farm, or part of the winemaking process. So in service of our people that are working with us, in service of the microbes in the soil, in service of the animals, and it causes a shift in the context of what farming means. So it right now, currently, it's an industrial model. How do we get, in order to make money, we need to get more productivity. This paradigm is, if we bring health and vitality to the space in which the plants grow, then the sort of the money comes later. The rewards come later. If you build a great brand, i.e. Tablas Creek, and you put in your energy into the quality of the wines, and the quality of the service, and the quality of the relationships with your club members, and building your club, then you're providing for others. The people that love your wine, they love your wine, but they also love you.
But I think it goes back a little bit again, to keep referencing him, but with Amigo, it's I think when you see examples, Tablas Creek and yourself being one of them, where you can hear this as someone who's still farming with the use of chemicals, etc. But you can see that it actually works. It's not just an idea and a dream and a head in the clouds thing. It actually works. I've seen some great. If I knew we were going to go down this road, I would have written their names down. But I've seen some fantastic filming of guys in the Midwest, cattle farmers in particular. There's one guy, I forget his name, but he's hilarious. But he went all the way back in history to when Dad started using chemical nitrogens, and now he's rebuilding the town single-handedly, pretty much. And it's
you're talking about Will Harris.
Yeah. He says his own comment is he sounds like Foghorn Leghorn. It's
he's good. Yeah,
he's good, and he makes a good point, and he's succeeding. He's making money doing things the right way, and that's what people need to see. I think people need to see that, oh no, you can do the right thing, and you can make a profit doing it. And you'll leave. More importantly, you'll leave the land in a better state for your kids.
Right.
We hope.
Will's
no, we know.
Will's a great model for this what we call mob grazing, intensive grazing.
Yeah.
Where it's this mimicking of what nature provided. Where, for us, we know that the buffalo along the plains were constantly moving across the plains in herds of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even 1 million or more. And as they moved through the plains, they would keep the animals in the young in the center in order to protect from the predators on the outside. But they marched across, and as they marched across, they would eat and graze and defecate, and what they were doing is they were refertilizing and giving back into the soil what it was maybe missing, or continually creating that balance. And but what's happened now is
right
now we just let the animals graze kind of willy-nilly in a 1,000-acre block, and they eat what they want to eat and don't eat what they don't want to eat. So now they're mimicking. So guys like Will are mimicking that natural, what nature showed them how to do is this grazing process where you eat through, and they put them in smaller paddocks and so on and so forth. And what that has done is it's increased the diversity of plants. So I went to a ranch up in the Sandhills in Nebraska, and the guy had 5,000 acres, and he had like 2,000 animals, and he would move them in little paddocks that had little electric wire systems, and they would all be in one area, like a 4-acre area, and they would be in there for about 4 hours, and then would move them to another one. He had 500 species of perennial grasses. Wow. Now, in today's prairies, they're all annual grasses. So there's nothing sustainable about the grass if it's perennial, but it is sustainable if you can maintain the root structure in the soil, which we know creates this environment for the mycorrhizal fungi to be on those roots continuously, and they're sloughing the carbon that comes down, that's extracted from photosynthesis into the blades of grass and then down into the roots. So they're constantly putting carbon back into the soil by virtue of the animals grazing, and then coming off the grazing, and then back on the grazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing that we've discovered we need to look at nature and the natural way of things to learn, right, of how to do stuff. And then to sculpt that, because obviously a vineyard is not a prairie; it's somewhat of a monoculture in its essence. So, learning, which you've done a lot of, and we're trying to do, learning to introduce other species and diversify a vineyard situation and achieve as best we can that same model. I want to taste the wine really quick, because otherwise we won't be doing our job. So let's start
with 6 o'clock somewhere or something.
Yeah, it's 5:25, close enough. So start with the Tablas Creek, the Le Complice 2018, which is unreleased actually, and this is a wine that was created at the behest of Robert Haas, Jason's father. We brought in a grape by the name of Terry Noir, which is one of the 14 of Chateauneuf, and he wanted to build a wine around it, so we did. It's three clones of Syrah, Terry Noir and some Grenache. A lot of stem fermentation in here. So, as I mentioned earlier, a decant on this young one's a good idea, but it gives it some of that spiciness. And Le Complice, the Accomplice, is in a tip of the hat to Terry Noir, which is, for some people, a struggle by itself, though I like it. Does a great job in the blending world.
It's beautiful. It's so elegant. I don't know that the Terry Noir is it something like Mourvèdre? I
No,
understand it has a thick skin.
it's a very pale color,
Mm-hmm.
almost like rosé, but then it has there's Jason Haas. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Jace.
But it has incredible structure, great tannic structure, and I mean, there's no color involved in it really. I mean, it very, very pale red. It wouldn't even make it to the Pinot Noir color, I wouldn't say, but really an interesting character. So, and it really influences a lot, even in small quantities. So within this, even though there's some powerful Syrah in there, if you know the Terre Noir, which I suppose, one of the few that does at this point locally, you can taste it in there. You can feel that texture and that character that it brings. It's been a super cool thing, and for me, one of the things that touches me with it is that I got to work with Bob Haas for a long time, and he was really a really great individual. And this was really, in my mind, his last thing that we can see on the table. He decided what he wanted to do, and he decided what we were going to call it. And so every time I open this one, it's kind of Bob's last hurrah for me, and it's a good hurrah too. It's very exemplary of what the kind of stuff he would do.
Nice.
We're gonna build a wine around that. Great. Really? Okay. We'll see what we can do.
This is an equity. We need to make more of this. We need to make
Jason,
this thing sing.
Jason cringing in his seat.
I totally get it.
It's super heavy. So let's taste yours, and you can explain it. I know nothing about this, and I want to talk about your wine part of your business as well as the farming.
Yep. Yes, this is Truett Hurst. So Truett Hurst is our brand up in Dry Creek. It was created by my son and I and a fellow named Phil Hurst. The Truett part came from a ranch that my great grandfather bought from the Truett family in 1881, and planted vines not too actually just on the edge of Dry Creek and Alexander Valley. And so when my sons and I built the Dark Horse property, it was a beautiful hillside piece of property that had about maybe 700 foot of elevation from bottom to top. We planted it all in reds. It's a southwest facing, and it's deep red soils. So deep red clay soils that come along the Mayacamas mountain range. So we're part of the northern part of the Mayacamas range. And
how's the vineyard laid out? Is it a head train situation or
some of them are head trains. The Petit Syrah and the Zinfandel are head trained, and Cabernet's on a vertical cordon, as well as the Grenache is on a vertical cordon. Matter of fact, the Grenache and the Syrah that we grow that's in this came from some of your clones that you guys created back in the early days. So what we did is we searched out those clones. And we did a little pirating off another ranch. I'm not sure that we actually bought them from you guys. And so we did the 145. I forget the clone number for the Grenache, 360, I think, something like that. And they just love it on the property. They're just so happy there. The most comfortable vines on our hillside property are the Syrah and the Grenache.
Okay.
One of the I'm not sure what you and I talked about, but one of the great opportunities in the future for us in the industry is to really get our arms around propagation of vines, of our own vines. So in other words, developing our own clones. So over time, when we have a vineyard that's been in the ground for 20 years or so, you can sort of easily quickly identify those vines that are the happiest.
Yeah.
And so you can, we can just make cuttings, and we can make vines, and we can repropagate. And now we're really building more and more the the fullest expression of the property.
Mm-hmm.
You get the chemicals out of the way, you create a healthy environment and healthy space by creating healthy soil. But really what you want is, you want residents on that property that really like being there. And so that's one of the great
Multi-generational residents, really, right?
generational residents. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
do you tend towards own rooting, or do you go to rootstock?
Well, I don't think we can do own rooting. I think there's too much phylloxera in the area. Although we're
Okay.
an isolated vineyard and we have all of our own property, we do bring an outside, sometimes, teams for harvesting. So
Mm-hmm.
and eventually it'll get you. What we do is we use rootstocks like St. George that been
Mm-hmm.
around for a long time, and we
Really
propagate the rootstock, and in order to make the match, and we find that rootstock works fine, works
It's
great.
interesting what you were saying about vines being happy in the place. My son is working with me at Tablas Creek also these days in the vineyard, and we were walking a block today, which is Vermentino, Grenache Blanc, and Mourvedre. And his observation was interesting. He's a young guy; hasn't really worked in the vineyard. He grew up in the vineyard, but he wasn't paying attention to the grapevines. He was paying attention to his toys and motorcycles and tractors and whatever. But he was noticing as we walked through the Vermentino and the Grenache Blanc, there was no vines missing in the blocks, yet the Mourvedre was sparse, scattered with a lot of vines missing, and questioning why is that? Why are the Grenache Blanc, the Vermentino? It's kind of the only answer I have for him is, well, it just kind of suited to this spot. They like it here, and it's
Yeah.
as we learn with all the new things we've planted there for Tablas Creek. We brought them from Chateauneuf-du-Pape into Passe Robles. They didn't ask to come, so we didn't know which ones would fit and which ones wouldn't. And it's been really one of the joys for me, of joys and heartaches, working at Tablas Creek, is to see how differently different varieties have responded. They're all on the same rootstocks. They're all being treated the same. Some of them just thrive, and some of them, though they make great wine, they take a lot more care, and there's a lot harder life for them, which is kind of interesting, and nice to see a young man's observation of that for me.
Yeah. Well, and it's important for us to understand that and notice that and appreciate that. The plants are talking to us all the time, and one of the ways they talk to us is just the way you described. If they're not happy, they're dying too young.
So for this winery, for Truett Hurst, what is the production? What are you doing? How many cases? Where can people get it? Because you don't see it. It's not a massive brand.
No, you can't get it anywhere but really at the cellar door.
Okay, there you go.
We have one outlet, and that's Total Wines and More, and we sell to a few Total Wines and More stores, but that's it. We were sort of fortunate. We don't sell to any restaurants at this stage of the game. So we didn't get hurt by the pandemic, and everything we sell is online, D2C, direct to consumer.
So this is 40 years of wisdom, is have one outlet.
Well, I don't recommend that. I mean, we have to build resilience into our businesses these days, and with the dynamics that we're dealing with, whether it's for us, we had 3 fires in 12 months. It's just been devastating, and so we're learning that Mother Nature is, we have to pay more attention to her, and we have to pay attention in ways that we didn't before.
We can never lose sight of the fact that she's in charge of the whole situation, I don't think.
Exactly.
So how many cases? What bottlings do you do? A white? Is there a white involved in Truett Hurst or no?
Well, Truett Hurst is a Zin house, the Zinfandel house, and but we snuck in our little Grenache Petit Syrah blend, which happens to be one of the more popular wines in the house, simply because of the nature and the style of it. We make some Sauv Blanc and we make some Chardonnay. So the Sauv Blanc and Chardonnay we make is in our sister appellation next door, the Russian River. And what we're soon to start doing is selling more Mendocino appellation wines down our way too. We will still have the core of what we do is from Dry Creek, which is where my great grandfather started,
Right.
140 years ago.
Home turf.
And he brought Zinfandel over. He actually brought Zinfandel over from Italy and propagated those vines here. But then he went and took vines up into Mendocino and propagated vines up there. So I actually have a vineyard that has some of those original vines that he
I was
brought up
going
there
to
in
say,
1906. Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
How
It's
is
pretty.
it? How is the clone's not a good enough word for it, but how is that the stuff
Well,
your grandma brought
it
over?
is a clone. It for sure is a
Right.
clone, and it's a little lighter clone. And it's hard to tell. The vines are so old at this stage of the game. So it's shy bearer at this stage. We get about a ton and a half to the acre, and but and you have to wait. You have to wait for it to go through. It's typical Zinfandel. It has to shrivel before it's
Right.
ready to harvest. But it's beautiful. It actually has a beautiful strawberry-like character. Not so much to the briary blackberry you get out of some Zinfandels, but it's more the
Mhm.
strawberry.
So is that a purchasable bottle for someone?
No, we're actually blending it into one of our Zinfandels, so it goes into one of our old vine Zinfandels.
And presumably you've continued propagating from those vines and have it planted elsewhere, yeah?
Well, that's the name of the game. How do we do that? How do we do just what I described? Is how do we carry on from generation to generation? And I should say that was an insight that I had from Aubert de Villon. This idea of identifying vines on the property and he was looking at, of course, from Pinot Noir at Romanée-Conti.
Mm-hmm.
And that really impacted me significantly. I got to say something about a comment that Jason made here before he pops off. I think and he talked about his father. So
Yeah.
his father popped in and he said, and I have and Jason himself said, or no, Dad said, I have an idea. And Jason's first thought was, oh no, but what a luxury to work with somebody who has so many ideas. So my kids at one point in time, they said, Dad, we love all your ideas, but we just can't do them all. So, and I sort of backed off. And so now I am, my creativity is in concert with my sons. And so
It must
I
be a
say,
good dad thing because I have my kids telling me with the family business, Dad, no, we can't do another varietal.
there you go.
I'm what we're
There
doing.
you go. There you go. Yeah.
But I have
And
so
then,
many ideas. I'm not sure why they don't understand it.
right. And you wonder why they notice some things and don't notice the things that you thought were really most important.
Right. They might be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. So it's all
So,
good.
production of Truett Hurst is what, 1,000 cases or
No, Truett Hurst is 20,000 cases
just out through the cellar door?
just through the cellar door. Yep.
Wow.
Well, let me see. 20,000 cellar door and then 2,000 in the wholesale market.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive.
It is really very impressive, and it's been a really fun. Now, I should explain that we have two brands. We have the Truett Hurst, and then we have a brand called VML, which is our Pinot Noir brand out of the Russian River.
Okay.
So we have a Dry
Okay.
Creek appellation and a Russian
So
River
that's
appellation,
part of those 20,000 cases.
and that's combined. Yeah,
And what is
20,000 cases.
VML? What does that mean?
Well,
VML.
our winemaker when we first started about 15 years ago was Virginia Marie Lambrix, and so
Okay.
she's since retired, and but we still carry the same
Wow.
the initials in the VML, and it's been a great brand, has great appeal to sort of all ages, but it's really leans more millennial, and so we do a lot of vineyard designated Pinot Noirs, so we kind of get into the deep geeky areas of small pieces of property, and
Mm-hmm.
I tell the winemaker, so this is my advice to him. I said, now just when you get on the property, just listen for what the property wants to say. And he looks at me like, what? And I said,
What?
well, that's the great insight into, I think, great winemaking and great grape growing is that we have a responsibility to hear, or one could say see or watch or observe, but
Hmm.
hear the expression that wants to be spoken from the vineyard, and then interpreting that into the wine. So, we look at, some winemakers are kind of come from the place of, I am winemaker. So I make the decisions, I make the blends. It comes out the way my artistic creative mind sees things.
Hmm.
But I really believe that it's probably more powerful to listen for what the expression of the place is.
It's
And so I take them out there and I say, okay,
interesting thing, right? That's an interesting game. I mean, I'm an old bull within our industry. I think that I've stayed at one place for the majority of my career, which could be described as boring, I suppose. But I've seen so many other wineries where they get a new winemaker, and the new winemaker throws out everything that the last winemaker. It's like a new president throws out all the stuff the last guy did and starts afresh, and it's just a confusion at that point to me where I agree 100% with what you're saying, and I absolutely believe it's what we do at Tablas. But it's such a long game because you can listen to what the vineyard and the grapes are saying, and you may have misheard, and you don't know that until the wine's finished in a barrel, and then you kind of go, okay, so next year it doesn't belong this way. We need to move it because we're ruining it by whatever, putting too many stems in, or it doesn't need to be whole clusters, or whatever your vinification decision was. And we're very gentle at Talbot Creek. I mean, the last thing I want is, I mean, I want all the credit, obviously, but the last thing I want is my handprint being the important factor in these bottles of wine. The piece of land has always got to be the important thing in these bottles. So, but it's such a long game because you get one shot a year, and then you have to adjust. And then, of course, Mother Nature throws her cards in every year. And that's, to me, that's what's great about what I get to do for a living is exactly that, is seeing the vineyard and listening and watching and feeling what's going on and making those decisions. And over however many years it's been, trying to get it right, which I don't know what right is, but we're getting better every year, I think. And it is,
Yep.
you're right, listening to what's going on and seeing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and we get, I don't know, 40 bites at the apple, 40 vintages or something like that, maybe. And
Yeah.
we get an opportunity to explore. And then ideally, you have this ability to pass it on to the next generation or the next winemaker, the next steward of the land, steward of the estate. And hopefully there's a symbiosis in how when people see it together and they can explore together and maybe discover together.
Well, I think that's the importance of what you're saying, working with your sons and daughters, I'm sure have some input too, even though they're not working within the business with you, is that they do know who you are and they do know you very, very well, and what you would have done and how you feel and how you react. And some of what you've done, it's just like you see in your kid. There's things that I see in my kids that, oh God, that's a character trait of mine that I wish they hadn't got. Some I'm glad they got. They got some of their mom's traits, which are fantastic.
Yeah.
And you hope that filters through with what they decipher from the winemaking and vineyard process from what I've done, and they take the good and they leave behind the bad or whatever. But some of it comes through in a translation, and that continuity rarer now perhaps than it was in the old days in the old country, but I think it's really valuable and it really will show in time. Multi-generational wineries and traditions changed and moved around, but still there's a basis from what you're doing that your grandkids will be taking part in, which I think is a dramatic part of what we get to do for a living. The legacy is great.
Yeah. Well, the legacy really is something special, and and I don't really want them to actually follow my footsteps, but what I would love for them to get the distinction of listening for the property and listening for the personality of the property and what it wants to say, and understanding that by just observing the expression of the vines themselves and the life force that's on the property, and sort of that kind of farming and service of life, it changes the whole relationship that you have with the property. So it really becomes less about, it's not about me, it's really about the expression of the property. And then you start to treat the property in a particular way.
But if they do follow that philosophy, then that is one of your footsteps, because I don't know many other people in our industry would make the statement you just made. So it is. I see that as that's what comes through to your kids. That's a great thing. That's unique.
Yeah, I don't find too many people using that terminology, but it's something that showed up for me inside of biodynamics, and the insight that I got from Alan York was just mind-boggling. Is he would speak somewhat that way. One of the analogies or metaphors I use is that raising a organic or biodynamic vine is like raising a child, in the sense that when we raise our kids, we can't really manipulate them, as much as we try. What we really can do is contribute to the health of the space that they grow up in, so we can feed them well, of course, give them the opportunity to go to good schools or have good friends, or maybe experience music if they choose to, or sports. But we just want them to explore, and want them to fully engage and explore life, any more than we want the grapevine to explore its surroundings. So we recognize that the health of the space for our child gives them an opportunity to be able to be fully and completely expressed. The same thing with the grapevines. We want the vine to send its roots down deep and explore all of those nutrients and elements that are in the soil throughout their roots, and then absorb that, bring that back up into the vine and into the fruit. And so if we can create as much of that healthy soil, healthy environment, whether it's above the soil, beneath the soil, we know that we've done everything that we possibly can to get the purest, cleanest, and most accurate expression of the vines, and then sort of get out of the way, or the accurate expression of the property.
There's
That's
for a lot of people. Getting out of the way can be the hard part, right? For people, it seems. Nope, you're frozen. We're gonna get Paul back. You back?
Oh, I thought you were stuck. I was stuck.
Yeah, you were stuck. You were frozen in time there for a moment.
Oh, gosh. And
I get
that was some
that.
of my
It's like
best stuff, Neil.
Yeah. Mother Nature steps in.
Yeah. That's right.
No, I mean the kids. I agree. But you only get one shot with the kids. You can't rip them out and replant them in 20 years. So, but it is very true. If I could go back, there's some practices that I would apply there that I didn't, and I do see that analogy. I use that analogy as well, bringing up kids. And it's such a fun thing to see you and a family, a generational going in that direction. So what is go? You were saying something.
Oh, no, I guess what I'm saying is that I'm starting with my grandkids now. So
Wow.
I've got
I'm not there yet.
three 13-year-olds, a 20-year-old, and a 17-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And the 13-year-old time frame is a pretty good time frame if you didn't lose them already. And
Right.
to hear grandpa stories, or maybe wisdom. Really fun. It's really fun to see.
That must a 13-year-old grandkid. Wow.
Yeah.
You're looking good. You're wearing well, Paul, I have to say.
I have a 20-year-old. I have one in college.
Oh,
yeah.
It's a testament to biodynamic farming right here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I should say this, if I was a professional at doing this particular job, I would have read your book and quoted pages from it, but I didn't even know you had a book. So, but I did buy it this morning. So, so I will be reading it.
Yeah, well, you can actually get
it. True to our roots. The fermentation is a business revolution, right?
Right.
2004.
3 or 4, right? Yeah.
Am I going to enjoy the read? Do you still believe the book?
Oh, for sure. It gave me great insights into shifting my orientation to, the what I believe the future of business should be, I simply say the future of business is for business to make the future its business. And you guys are demonstrating that every daily. Every time you take on, biochar. I mean, every time you take on something new, what you're saying is, there's more to do. There's just more to do. And I don't want to be political here, but when Biden reached out and says, what is it you can do, and how is it you can contribute to the country going forward, I really think that it's a really critical component for us all to consider, is that we're the living beings on the planet that have a nervous system, have a thinking system, and we can recognize that to expand our consciousness and our awareness of what we're doing to the planet, what's possible for the planet, what's possible for our communities, what's possible for the health of the space in which the future generations are going to grow, is paramount. I mean, I can't, and as I get older, I'm 70 now. So as I get older now, I think more about that, because I know I have less time to make a difference in that regard.
So I've never written a book. Did you find that experience to be kind of a good self-reflection, making you think about what you do and what you've done? Was that kind of a cool trip?
Well, what I did is I wrote it from principles, business leadership principles, in order to create a framework for people to explore themselves. So I used examples of things that we did do in order to bring life to it. It's any more than Amigo Bob coming out. You and I, we didn't know what to do in the vineyards. We didn't know even how to think about it, but he would give us examples of things that he had done that would start to bring a picture to the principles by which he was operating. And the principles he was operating in during that period of time is that we don't use chemicals. It interferes with the nutritional value of the soil. So and this is ongoing. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop anywhere.
He described himself to me as a conduit from one farmer to the next. He said, "That's all I am. I'm a conduit from one farmer to the next." So I'm just translating, moving information around, which was fantastic. And I don't know, we'll see the like of that again. You're a treasure of Mendocino County, says Margaret Padroni.
I see. Hi, Margaret.
Figured she knew you. So what's the future? What's the future of Truett Hurst, and what is new? What's on the horizon? What are you going to walk into your kid's office and say, "I've had an idea, let's do"?
Well, the one we're working on now is ROC, and so we're bringing ROC. So, you guys were part of the pilot program. So
yes, we
for all you out there listening, these are the real pioneers of ROC. They took it on big time, and you're like the perfect model example of what we could hope for in the wine industry, or even in ROC. For a great example, one thing we've noticed, in you and I, Neil, have noticed it in biodynamics, is that wineries have a really interesting relationship with agriculture, not so different than other agricultural sectors, but because of the way we speak about the importance of place, really starts to bring together a whole different orientation for how you engage with your farm.
Totally. And I feel like one of the things for me, we have that, but we're also in perhaps the strongest agricultural position to be able to voice that and have an audience that is listening and embracing it, because we end up with a bottle of wine and not a can of peas or whatever it might be. Yes. We grab people's attention, and I think it's not a big step to buy a bottle of Tablas Creek that's ROC certified, and then buy a piece of meat or a vegetable to go along with it that's also ROC. So I think it's a responsibility that we have, because we do have a loud voice in this arena because of what we make, for better or for worse. That it's true. And I think the more wineries that embrace and get involved will promote the ROC more rapidly and get more people involved. And I think that's something that and it's one of the reasons I was very keen to be involved in it. Is because it gives us the ability to push this forward more rapidly, and I think it's something we need to do. And as wineries, we have a pretty good deal of it for the most part. So it's giving back a little bit, I think, and using our platform, and that's something that we should embrace.
That's a beautiful way to look at it, for sure. I used to say that we needed to keep moving quicker because people are right behind us and they're going to run right over us if we don't keep reinventing and recreating and exploring in new places all the time.
I think we do have to keep moving quickly. And I mean, thankfully, there's people like you who are 70 years old are still doing it. You're still like the Robert Haas's of the world. There's always those people that are coming up with ideas that, maybe 1 out of 5 Jason decided that he was going to run with, and it worked, and Paul was doing this long before Jason was involved. Obviously, he's always been known as the guy that was going to stick his neck out and try something new, and good for it. I mean, we need those people to make it work and keep it moving forward. And I mean, the ROC, it's hard to see much past that for me, as far as it seems like such an all-encompassing thing, and it really is a value, I think, for the consumer to be able to see a product that's created in that way. I mean, we've all got to tip our hat to Yvon Chouinard and Patagonia and his influence on business and how things are done. And I know I don't know what part he is in this, but I know he's a major part of it. And it's a great thing to be a part of. And I can't see the next thing, because there's so much to do within the ROC and so much promotion to do that I think it's super exciting. And the fact that it's global makes it even more so. It's an international situation. It's not just within California. It's not just within the grape industry. I think we're one of 18 or something that was in the pilot, and nobody thinks so much about the cotton, and the really hard farming stuff is probably the reality. So if we can help bring that along, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. Well, if Yvon Chouinard's looking for what's next, I can tell you that.
Exactly. I don't think I'm that guy. I'm like, all right, Yvon, I'll do your work for you.
And he's 80
to climb El Capitan.
84 or something like that. So
I know. I had the pleasure of meeting him, which I was not really necessarily. I didn't care about Patagonia or any of that. I was surrounded by people that did, but I had a dinner and I met him, and that's why we got involved, because I ended up coming under his spell, if you will. He was just such an engaging guy, and same as the Amigo thing. All of a sudden, he made it make sense to me in a different way, in a simple enough for me to understand. Like, no, this is how it's got to be, and the only way this environment of this world is going to change is by farming, and that's what we need to change. It's like, okay, there it is. I can grasp and be a part of that, and that's why we pushed to be involved. One dinner serving the Tablas Creek lamb, and there it was.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Well, and he's in the process of passing on to his kids, and I met the new CEO a couple nights ago, and he's very engaged, super engaged. And
I've never met. What is his kid's name?
His name is Ryan Gellert. Ryan Gellert.
Right.
Out of Amsterdam, actually.
Out of Amsterdam.
Yeah, and so he's been over in Europe, and he's just I'm not sure if he's actually moved over here or not yet, but they continue to explore inside of business and personal principles that they believe are important inside a business, or at least Yvon does, and and Ryan's shepherding that for them, and quite frankly, they this whole pandemic's been super challenging for a business like that when it's really organized around all of these stores.
Yeah,
and they had a lot of people to take care of, but now they're getting into food. So they're getting into Patagonia provisions and food, and right now Yvon sees that that's one of the key sectors of business that will save the home planet, as he describes it. And so the work and he's seen that what you and I the Haas family have been doing is right at the heart of the matter for improving the health of the planet. I see it a lot like what we're doing with the regenerative movement is a lot like the alternative energy movement. We're seeing that we've reached a tipping point now with wind and solar. It's going to be the future of power for the planet.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to have had that drive, and it's not easy to do that. I mean, I think that the Haas's, Bob, and now Jason have run Tablas Creek very much as they can with those same principles within the company of how they treat people and all of that. And it's great, but it's not easy. Those are not easy decisions to make. I don't make them. I watch them being made for the most part, but it's such a pleasure to watch decisions being made for the benefit of the people that are working and the employees and the people that make the whole thing tick, rather than a bottom line or a benefit just for the ownership and the progression of the company. It's really one of the pleasures of working for that company is that decisions are made with the employees in mind first and foremost, and that shouldn't be rare, but I think it is.
Oh, very rare. Very, very rare. And that's one of the things that we hope to get at with the ROC is that the employees on the property are part of the expression of the property. They're part of the expression of the farm. And so having the terminology you use is give them voice is really critical. My career has kind of gone from winemaking to running a couple companies and then going back into farming for several years. Now I've taken a little hiatus to come back to run this company, Truett Hurst. But I spend as much time as I can on the farm and showing people how to make biodynamic preps or this new insights into different types of equipment that I think we should use to bring back the health of the soil. But the guy that I listen to the most is the guy that's on the property the most. When he says it's time to move from this block to that block to do this, I'll just say, okay, so what is it you see, and why is it that you see it's now?
Right.
And because he's looking like 6 steps ahead because he's been there for so long, and
that's an important point. And I was explaining this today to my kid is, the guy who runs the vineyard and has been there since the very beginning, he sees all of these things, but he doesn't necessarily translate them into what they mean to us. And he would just, well, you'll explain, no, we're going to do this bit. And he goes, I know that. We do that every year. But then that's where that voice comes in. It's like, well, yeah, I can tell you when that's happening if you want to know that. It happens every year at this time. And that's important and really such a valuable thing. Because whether I like it or not, I'm not the guy out there pruning every grapevine. That guy is. So he sees more than I do. And it's important that he's the one that has the power and the knowledge to come to me and say, it's time, like you're saying, it's time to do this because you wanted to know when this happens. And I know when it happens. It's super inspiring to me.
Yeah.
All right. It's 6:00 and you've got 8,000 grandchildren and it's Friday and you've got better things to do than talk to me. And I have my son's 30th birthday tonight. So I got stuff to do too. Yeah.
Congrats.
And I would love to continue this conversation. I'd like to come and visit with you and be able to do this face to face and in the vineyard. It would be super cool.
I'd love to hang out in the vineyard.
I will make the effort to do that.
Taste some wines. It'd be fantastic.
Well, this wine is beautiful. It's been a all too brief conversation, but a great one. And I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. You're a busy guy, and I look forward to being part of pushing the ROC forward with you. I'm there. I'll give you whatever backup I can.
Well, I appreciate that partnership because it's going to take a lot of energy with a lot of people, and it's going to be a collective effort to kind of get the country moving in a particular direction. I do think that there's some natural momentum. I do think consumers and citizens are alike or want to move in that direction, just like we wanted to get away from fossil fuels. So
they're ready for it.
So that's great. But the exploration, the experimentation on the ground was what you guys are doing, and I was so impressed and so inspired by the time being down there running around with Jordan that day and hanging out with Nathan and the animals, and it was beautiful. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, they're not hard people to hang around with, Jordan
No.
and Nathan. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm being asked from the background what size T-shirts you wear because we're going to send you a Tablas Creek.
Oh, yeah. Farming like the world depends on it.
Yeah.
Or said farm like the world. I say farming like the world depends on it.
Right. Well, you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're telling
you are.
too.
And you are too. So you might shift that farming, rather than the challenge.
We should.
Just
For
say,
Tablas Creek, we should. You're right. You're
follow
absolutely.
us. Follow us. We're farming.
Hopefully, Jason's still listening. I'm not in charge of T-shirts. I just wear them.
I'm a medium. A
medium.
Yeah.
Blue,
Yeah.
gray, or blue or gray. You're wearing blue. He likes blue.
Blue.
All right. It's
super fun.
Pleasure. Let's keep doing it. Let's keep it rolling. Cheers.
All right.
Thank you very
Good to
much.
see you.
I'll
Thank
be
you,
up there.
everybody, for joining us. Appreciate it.